Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name is Kevin Law, and I'm the chairman of the Stony Brook Council. We have a busy agenda here today, and I'll explain what we're going to be doing in a couple of minutes.
Point of order?
Point of order. I'm going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance first, Lou. Is that okay?
That's my point of order.
That's my point. I said I'm going to explain what we're doing in a few minutes. We're going to do.
Look like you were ahead of yourself.
Never. And Mr. Howard, let's stand and you can lead us in the pledge.
I'm even going to do a right-handed salute. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If we can remain standing, and since we are a country still at war, and we have a lot of men and women over there giving their lives for us and their service to our country, and a lot of Long Islanders losing their lives, if we could have a moment of silence for all those who have. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay. For those who are new and who have never attended a council meeting before, in fact, we haven't had guests many in the past, so we welcome you. We have an agenda of several matters. And we have a lot to accomplish here, and I know there are others here who are coming to speak on, or coming to listen to some of the deliberations we'll have on some old business regarding Southampton College. But our first order of business is the adoption of the minutes of May 11th, 2010. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Second by Jean Grant. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the chair's report. That is me. I'm going to be brief, given the amount of different items that we have on the agenda. But I thought it'd be helpful to mention a couple of things. First, welcome back. Hope everybody had a nice summer. Hard to believe now we're in fall, and it certainly feels like fall today. Baseball playoffs about to begin. Jets and Giants winning. We're off to a good start in fall. We continue to live in, very difficult times, precarious times, the economic climate most of us in this room have ever observed. The state of New York continues to be faced with its worst budget crisis ever. And many constituencies, especially the educational community, continues to feel the pain. And Stony Brook University is not immune from that pain. And so we continue to try to deal with the continuing bad news of the economy. And I'm not sure if the recession ended for you. That so-called the recession ended a year ago, but for New York, I think the pain is still to be had, and will continue well into next year and the year ahead, a year after that. For those who don't know what the Stony Brook Council is, we are an advisory board to the administration here, Dr. Stanley and his team. The Stony Brook is part of the SUNY system. We are not a board of directors or board of trustees. There is a SUNY board of trustees that regulates and manages the SUNY system. But each of the 64 campuses has an advisory council. And that's what we are. We are an advisory council. Our job is to promote the welfare of Stony Brook University, to promote the mission of Stony Brook University, which is to provide a quality and support a quality of undergraduate education here at the university. And we're charged with cooperating with the administration to help implement and carry out their policies. And so we meet only 4 times a year. That's what the statute requires us to do. And we meet twice in each semester. And again, it's not like we're a regular adjudicatory body, decision-making body that meets monthly on a regular basis. We're an advisory board to the university, and all 64 campuses has. But at the end of the day, it's the SUNY Board of Trustees that regulates and manages the entire SUNY system. And I figured it was worthwhile for some of you to hear that who weren't really sure of what this body is and what we do. And by the way, in case you're wondering, the 10-member board here is made up of all volunteers. We're not state employees. We are volunteers. Nobody gets compensated for their role on the council. Everybody takes away time from their families and their businesses to be here, just in case you were wondering. And I thank you all and as members of this board for your commitment to public service and giving something back to the community, wearing your hat as a board member of the Stony Brook Council. I am the chairman of this council, and one of the things I get to do is some fun things and some nice things for the university here. A couple of things that I want to share with you today is first we have a new member, and I'd like to all of you to welcome Matthew Graham, the president of the undergraduate student government. Matthew. Also in attendance is the new Alumni Association president, Gloria Snyder. We also have the new president of the University Senate, Professor Fred Walter. And we have the president of the graduate student organization, Froylan and Cisco. And also happy for those who haven't met him yet, after a national search, Stony Brook welcomes its new dean of the medical school, Ken Kashansky. And with that, everybody else here knows everybody at the table, but for the purposes of the stenographer, now I'm going to ask for a roll call of the members of the council, starting with Mr. Trotta. If you state your name.
Frank Trotta.
Lou Howard.
John Cochran.
Jean Garand.
Kevin Law.
Leonard Benedict.
John Corrado.
Diana Weir.
Matthew Grant.
Thank you. So let the record be duly noted that a quorum exists and Mr. Flynn on the way. Okay, as I said, one of the nice things I get to do, we all get to do, is to sometimes make presentations. And we have a presentation today to the Stony Brook University men's lacrosse team. Coach Rick Sowell and some of the members of his team had an outstanding season. It included an undefeated conference championship, the number 6 nation ranking, the number 6 in the nation in terms of its rank, and Stony Brook University's first ever trip to the NCAA quarterfinals in 2010. Big round of applause. We're going to invite up, we have Coach Rick Sowell here, and in attendance from the athletics department is our terrific AD, Athletic Director Jim Fiore, and we have Donna Woodruff and Matt Larson. And accepting the plaque will be, along with Rick, will be Tom Compitello, the men's lacrosse senior, and Adam Rand, the men's also a senior from the men's lacrosse team. Tom and Adam and Rick, please come up. You ready? Tom. Hey, Adam. Congratulations. All right. Sam here. I think we have a beautiful plaque from the Stony Brook Council. This is from all of us, not just from me. To the men's lacrosse coach, Rick Sowell. Rick, congratulations on an awesome year and bringing such pride to this university. Congratulations. team here. We got some other gifts, some awesome shots for those who haven't seen of the men's lacrosse team. We got to do this with the basketball team at our last meeting. And guys, really awesome. And I went to Stony Brook here many, many years ago, probably before you were born. And there wasn't this type of excitement on the campus when it came to athletics, whether it's the football program, the basketball program, now the lacrosse team, and the women's sports teams. It's really phenomenal. It's a great, great thing for Long Island as well. So congratulations, guys. All right, best of luck to you. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Want to take this? Right? You know where they're going, it's just... Yes. Oh, good. Okay, let the record reflect that Mr. Robert Flynn has joined us. Thank you, Bob. Good to see you. We now have a full attendance of the council. All right, next up on the agenda is the President's report. I'm going to hand over the platform to Dr. Sam Stanley.
Thank you so much, Kevin, and good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. Again, I thank everybody in attendance. It's wonderful to see full attendance from the council. Very much appreciated. I'm going to make my report very, very short because we do have a lot of business today to go through. But I did want to highlight just three things very quickly. One is we had some really wonderful news about sponsored research. So one of the things that differentiates Stony Brook from other universities is our commitment to scholarship, the generation of new knowledge. And one of the major markers of that is how much you get in sponsored research support and how much you spend in support of sponsored research. It's really a benchmark that we use to compare ourselves to other universities. And it's really a mark of the productivity of our faculty, students, and staff. Well, I'm very proud to say that for the first time, Stony Brook surpassed $200 million in sponsored research expenditures. Now, we benefited from the stimulus money. Everybody knows the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. So this is going to be tough to repeat because we did very well in stimulus money. We had almost $55 million in stimulus money. But this is a great goal for us. We're going to be working forward for it. And again, I'm so proud of our faculty, students, and staff for their efforts in this. The second thing I wanted to talk about was a student accomplishment, and we had many, but I just wanted to point out one thing. I'm sure all of you have heard of the Fulbright scholarships. They're one of the most distinguished scholarships available for graduate students. Well, I'm very pleased to announce that Stony Brook University PhD student Travis Holloway was awarded a Fulbright scholarship to study in Germany in philosophy. So again, to Travis Holloway, congratulations from all of us at Stony Brook. And the third thing I'm going to talk about is just two faculty accomplishments. And again, the Stony Brook faculty is outstanding. It really is what buttresses every component of the university. And they do amazing things all the time. But I'm just going to single out two for note. One is Lorna Roll receiving the prestigious NIH Director's Pioneer Award. As somebody who's been involved in biomedical research, I can't tell you how prestigious this is. Most universities in the country have no Pioneer Award winner. I came from Washington University in St. Louis, which is the number 2 or 3 ranked medical school in the country. And at the time I left, we had not had a Pioneer Award winner. So it's such a major event to have one on our campus. Lorna, who's chair of the Department of Neurobiology and Behavior and member of the Central Nervous System Disorders Centers in the Center for Molecular Medicine at Stony Brook, won this award for her work in Alzheimer's disease. So incredibly important work. She will receive up to $500,000. She will receive $500,000 per year for the next 5 years to do this very exciting work. So again, join me in congratulating her. And the next one is one very close to home. If you're a scientist or an engineer, there's really a couple of honors that one aspires to. One, of course, is the Nobel Prize. I would love to win that, but that's difficult. But one of the others, certainly in the U.S. and abroad, is to be inducted to the National Academies. This is the group of the premier scientists and engineers in the country. And I'm so pleased to say that our Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs and Vice President for Brookhaven Affairs, here with us today, Eric Kaler, yesterday was inducted into the National Academy of Engineering. Please join me in congratulating him. So many positive things happening. As people have returned to the campus, there's a real sense of excitement here. It's so wonderful that we've been able to welcome such an outstanding class back. We'll have other reports that will deal with some of the issues that we're facing currently, but I really wanted to get us started off on a very positive note because things are really very positive at Stony. And I'll close there.
Good. Thank you, Mr. President. Next on our agenda, we're going into the reports. And prior to the chair, I'm going to take some things out of order, and I'm going to ask Cheryl Hamilton, our Director of the Educational Opportunity Program, to give a presentation on the EOP.
Good morning. So I was asked to speak very briefly about the Educational Opportunity Program here at Stony Brook, known as EOP. EOP is basically an academic support program. Statewide, the mission of the Educational Opportunity Program is to provide access and opportunity for higher education to those students who have been deemed economically disadvantaged by New York State standards and academically disadvantaged by the university standards.
What do we have, a short video?
Will we do the video first? Okay, start. That might be helpful. We're good?
Next, trying to raise graduation rates for students of color on college campuses. The Obama administration is convening a summit next month to try to find fresh approaches to that concern. We have a report on a program that's getting some good results now. Special correspondent John Talenko reports for Learning Matters, which produces education stories for the NewsHour.
This fall, about 1.5 million students started out at four-year colleges and universities. Unfortunately, if patterns hold, 6 years from now, only about half will have graduated. It's much worse for Black and Latino students. Only 40% graduate. But some colleges do better. This is one of them, the State University of New York at Stony Brook. A diverse school with 16,000 undergrads, Stony Brook graduates 65% of its Latino students and 70% of its Black students, more than almost any other public university in the country. Key to its success is a special program that helps some 600 low-income, mostly minority students make it to graduation. It's called EOP, for Educational Opportunity Program. Cheryl Hamilton is the director.
Students who come through the program are students who might not otherwise have the opportunity to go to college. Many of our students are not just first-generation college students, but we have many students who are first-generation Americans.
Like 23-year-old Jose Gibson. Born in Guyana, he moved to the United States at age 10.
We just came over to the United States. We just wanted to survive. My mom had to find a job, my dad had to find a job, and we also had to find our own apartment.
His family settled in upstate New York. His father worked as a security guard. His mother cleaned in a hospital. And Jose went to public high school. Was college part of your thinking?
College was it wasn't in the plan at first. I didn't see it happening. I didn't think I was going to make it this far.
Many of our students come from communities where they're not seeing a lot of people coming out of those communities who are professionals. They don't have folks in their corner saying, this is what you need to do, or, oh, how exciting that you're studying engineering. Maybe you can come and work for my firm during the summer so you can get some hands-on experience. Our students are not getting that.
So to get these students to graduation, Stony Brook uses a three-part approach. Part one begins the summer before freshman year, when 125 students, many needing to catch up academically, arrive on campus for 5 weeks of college boot camp.
The boot camp, it was shocked. They had pretty strict guidelines. One thing that struck everyone's attention as soon as we got there was they took away all our cell phones. There's no cell phones, and people cried and, oh, I'm gonna call my mom, I gotta do this. So that was big.
Students are in classes all day and at their desks until well into the night.
Mandatory study hours. That was new to a lot of people. 7 to 11 that you had to study. We would have a pair of private tutors patrolling the hallways, making sure that you was at your desk. And that 4 hours you could not be sleeping, sitting, or even conversating.
Study hours will start promptly at 7:15.
It really does feel like a boot camp.
Well, I think if we just leave the students on their own to study when they feel like studying and leave them with their cell phones, I suspect that probably not a lot of work would get done. We have a group of students who don't even think it's possible for them to sit at a desk for 4 hours. And so just helping them to understand that they can, helping them to realize that it is possible. It's not easy. The interesting thing is once the academic year starts and there's no longer a curfew and they're allowed to have their cell phones and, the rules are so much more relaxed, students are still giving themselves those 4 hours of mandatory study per night, and the students who do that are our students who are most successful.
Okay, so these are ways.
If students do fall behind, they get free tutoring. And those in more serious academic trouble take a mandatory 6-week-long study skills workshop. That's part two.
We have all of our students, any student who we identify as being at risk, sits down with their assigned academic advisor and develops what we call an academic success contract. So the counselor and the student would come up with, well, this is what we think this student needs to do in order to bring their grade point average from here to here.
But sometimes even that's not enough. So next comes the heart of the program, part three.
You can talk to me. Tell me what your needs. Tell me if you're homesick. Tell me if you think you need more time on the phone. Whatever it is that you think you need. We concentrate on the person, the whole person. We make them think, no, what do you like? You told me this about your mom. You told me this about your brothers and sisters. You told me this about your upbringing. No, let's really look at your person and find out what's going to make you happy and successful as an adult.
Every student in EOP has a counselor like Dorothy Corbett, and they're required to meet that person 4 times a semester. A student Dorothy came to know very well was Yahaira Montano. In the spring of her first year, Yahaira had a crisis.
I think I saw her in the hallway crying, if I remember correctly, and I pulled her into my office and said, what's going on?
My mom used to, battle with alcoholism, and obviously when you battle with alcoholism, you have the denial stages, and the person becomes a different person. And I went back home, and the door was locked.
She was distraught, and she said she didn't know what she was going to do. She told me her mother had kicked her out.
Next thing you know, I'm crying. I'm like crying in the office, and so
I started letting her know, okay, you need to calm down. I'm going to help you. It might not be today. Before this summer comes, you will have a place to stay.
And she did. That summer, Yahaira lived on campus, and afterwards stayed there year-round.
Some of these kids have lives that are so complicated that they need a lot more. And that's what we do. The way we are in this department, we're going to find a way to help you.
Please rise.
It worked for Yahaira. She graduated this spring. But many other students here still need a lift. Stony Brook's overall graduation rate averages to around 60%. These special services, why don't you do this for all your undergrads?
I would love for everyone to get it, but the challenge is we don't have the resources to do it.
Instead of expanding EOP, Stony Brook's president, Dr. Samuel Stanley, is looking for ways to save it. Since 2008, New York State has cut funding for the program by 17%.
I will work very hard to defend EOP That should be part of our core mission, to fulfill this concept of the American dream. And if we don't have kinds of examples where people have been successful, then I think you're caught, essentially. And so communities can be caught in a cycle where no one has succeeded or there's been very little success. So I think it becomes incredibly important that we provide these kinds of success stories because I think other people build on them.
That's the hope for graduates like Jose Gibson. He plans on becoming a nurse. And Yahaira Montano started graduate school in social work this fall.
Cheryl, how many kids do we have in the program now in 2010-11?
We currently have 584 students enrolled in the program. Right. In short, our students who come into the university through EOP fall short of the criteria through general admission, but demonstrate the potential to succeed. And the reason they fall short is largely due to socioeconomic factors. So our goal of the program is to really help our students to work up to their full potential. And we do this by providing a wide array of academic support services. As indicated in the video, it all begins with our mandatory pre-freshman summer program, which students fondly describe as academic boot camp. So in 5 weeks, our students take 4 classes, 2 of which are credit-bearing, and complete 2 of the general education requirements. And they also take developmental classes in both math and writing. And I'd like to point out in summer 2010, by the end of the summer, 84% of our students tested out of developmental math, which meant that they were able to go directly into credit-bearing math courses. And for those of them studying in the sciences, that's extremely important. We also had 24 very motivated students who this past summer took part in a chemistry workshop that was led by our own Dr. Ellen Lee. And those students continue to do very well in the chemistry courses. Each of our students who are in EOP are assigned academic advisors who work with them from the time they are admitted to the program all the way until graduation. And with that, our students get a wide array of services. Our advisors provide academic advising, personal counseling, career counseling, and financial aid counseling. So it's very much like one-stop shopping for our students in EOP. Additionally, the program provides a comprehensive tutorial program which emphasizes support in the gateway science and mathematics courses. As mentioned, the program currently serves 584 students, but the enrollment for the program is driven largely by our funding. You'll see that from 2005 to 2007, with increased funding, we were able to increase the enrollment in the program. But unfortunately, from 2007 to present, we've seen a 27% decrease in the amount of freshmen that we've been able to enroll in our program. For those students who do enroll, our students are actually quite successful. EOP's graduation rate is over 70%, which is actually remarkable when you consider that for low-income students nationally, the average is 42%. Our EOP students at Stony Brook actually have the highest graduation rate of all EOP students in the state of New York. And in spite of the fact that our EOP students are coming in slightly less prepared than their non-EOP peers, our graduation rate is a little more than 6% higher than that of Stony Brook's general student population. The funding for the program is provided by New York State along with the university. While our funding from the university has remained strong, unfortunately, our funding from the state is threatened each year. You'll see that from 2009 to 2010 to the current fiscal year, we have seen a $60,000 reduction in funding for the program. So in spite of threats to funding, our students continue to be successful. And we know that with increased funding, the program will be able to enroll more students and will give more deserving students the opportunity to enroll, succeed, and graduate from Stony Brook. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
I just have a question for you, Cheryl.
Yes.
How many of these students just drop out from the system? Because I see in your profile in there, you have readmits. Are they the students who drop out and then come back because they're not qualified to graduate?
No, we do have, in terms of readmits, we have some students who might leave the program for a semester or two, often for personal reasons. Again, realize that our students are struggling with a number of socioeconomic factors. So students might need to go home to assist their families, to work full-time, but most of our students who do take time off do come back.
So the fallout, so the people who leave because it's just too much of a rigorous program, how many of you do you have? I mean, what's the percentage there, do you know?
I would say maybe 10% of our students actually leave
10%?
school altogether. Again, our graduation rate of 74% does not include students who leave Stony Brook and then graduate from other colleges and universities. And many of our students come from the 5 boroughs of New York City, and when they do return home, they may choose to attend a CUNY as opposed to graduating from the university.
Thank you, Sarah.
Any other questions for Cheryl?
Just a comment again, I think Cheryl is modest, but this is the best EOP program in the state, period. The numbers say so. And, you know, as I said in my brief moment of fame on PBS, we really work very hard for this program. I think it's exactly epitomizes Stony Brook. This is access for the most economically disadvantaged students, and this is helping them succeed. And it really, as I said before, I think it makes a great difference to communities. So I really thank Cheryl and all of her team. She has a great team who works with her. And again, we're very appreciative of all of their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Cheryl. Next on our agenda is a presentation from Matthew Whalen on enrollment here at Stony Brook.
Thank you and good morning. My name is Matt Whalen. I'm the Assistant Provost for Admissions and Financial Aid at the University, overseeing the new student enrollment. Very briefly, what I'd like to do is walk you through a brief presentation. Cheryl's a very hard act to follow, so bear with me, please. Stony Brook has enjoyed over the last 5 years a remarkable growth pattern. This chart shows our growth in applications, effectively a 30% growth in applications over the last 5 years. What it doesn't show is that the SAT in this time period has also grown. The SAT of our applicant pool has grown from about 1106 to 1115. Fairly remarkable in terms of when you attract more applications, many universities stay stable. We've been able to not only attract more, but attract better. That's very important for Stony Brook, very important for Long Island, and very important for the state of New York. We also know that we have outperformed in the rate of growth our public AAU benchmarks, Ohio State, Michigan State, some of the others. That information comes to us from the clearinghouse. This next slide shows our growth. The top line here shows our first year admission growth. And you've seen a slight increase, about 13% increase in the number of students we've admitted. As your quality increases, you need to admit more students because the smarter students from around the state have more options about where they'd like to attend. So the 13% growth really is a modest growth pattern given the bottom line. The bottom line shows our growth in the accepted student SAT score going up about 40 points from 1212 to 1252. To put that in perspective, only about 20% of the students in the nation score above 1200. Stony Brook is attracting some of the best and brightest students from around the state. Lines that go down and to the right are traditionally not good unless it's an admissions rate. This shows our admissions rate over the last 5 years, dropping from about 47.5% to currently 41% this year. The slight uptick this year is again driven by our quality and the number of students. To put this slide in perspective, the National Association of College Admissions Counseling details that schools that accept fewer than 50% of their applicants are among the most selective in the nation. This will be borne out really by the next slide that we have here. Difficult to read, to try to put some information in here. But the only schools in the nation that have of our public AAU benchmarks, the top public research universities in the country, the only schools that have a lower admissions rate than us are University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, University of Virginia, and University of California, UCLA, and University of California at Berkeley. We outperform in terms of our selectivity schools such as University of Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, University of California, Davis, some of the best research universities in the country. Stony Brook is a very, very selective school. Our first year enrolled number, the top line, the blue line at the top, really shows a fairly stable enrollment rate of about 2,700 students. The uptick in fall 2008 was based on the slight increase in yield and some mid-range SAT scores that was unexpected. But really that 2,700 number, to put that in perspective, you know, a 1% shift in our yield rate, the number of students we admit who enroll, is about 100 student difference. So all it takes is a tenth or 2/10 of a point to adjust this number up and down. Again, the more important line on this slide may be the quality growth. We've moved our quality from an 1178 SAT to 1215. Again, some of the brightest students in the state are choosing to attend Stony Brook. That's critically important for Stony Brook, for Long Island, and for the state, that we keep our brains here in the state so that they can give back to us as we go forward. Moving forward, we're not resting on our laurels. We have things that we're doing to make sure that we're reaching out to the best and brightest students in the country, in the state. We want to reach out and make sure that we keep the bright students here on Long Island, and we do that through trying to be available to students wherever and whenever they are. We've developed virtual tours. We've developed, you can go on your iPhone and iPad and download our virtual tour if you'd like. We've also improved our admissions process to be paperless, to be green, and next year we'll be implementing a brand new paperless transcript process to make it easier on the students to help get information into us so that we can provide better advisement through the course of their 4 years here. That being said, there's some good news.
Any of the council members have any questions from that? No? Matt, thank you very much. I had originally thought I'd ask Abe Blackman to give a presentation on FIA, but given the amount of things we have on the agenda, I asked him to punt that to the next meeting, and so we could discuss that at the next meeting. And so we're going to go down to D, the budget update, and I'm going to ask Mr. Mark Maculitis to give us a budget update.
Good morning. My name is Mark Maculitis. I'm the University Budget Director here. I have the unenviable position of following up all this positive news about the good things going here on campus and Cheryl's work and Matt's work. My job today is to give you a budget update, so don't hold it against me personally. First thing I'd like to do is clarify, when a couple of the slides will show these years up on top. We call them fiscal years. Our fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th. The state's fiscal year runs from April 1st to March 31st. And the calendar year runs from obviously January to December. So what we'll be talking about here on these slides are our SUNY's and Stony Brook's fiscal year. The bottom line here is that through the past 3 years, Stony Brook has received $59 million worth of cuts to the state budget, representing 19.2% of the budget that we began the year with in fiscal year 08-09. These are significant cuts. These are basically unprecedented cuts that we've received each year. And it started basically in 8-9. Our budget was cut $16.5 million. These two cuts there. The next bunch of cuts we received in 9-10 equaled $20.8 million, and this year we received basically another $21 million worth of cuts to our operating budget. What I'm talking about here today is our operating budget. What I want to point out here on the bottom here, there's a cut we received basically of $12.1 million. It's called non-funding of 10-11 contractual salary increase costs. These are costs which the campus has to pay, come up with the money with ourselves to pay for our employees. These are basically union contracts that mandate that the rank and file members of the university are going to receive contractual increases. We are forced to pay them. We're required to pay them. We normally get funding for these type of increases through the state of New York. But for this part of our budget, what happened was the state of New York didn't provide us with any funding for these increases. So we're having to come up with $12.1 million in funding ourselves to cover these increases. So also want to point out that this $59 million cut doesn't include any additional reductions we've received in state support that were offset by tuition increases. So what has happened in the past is sometimes our state support has been reduced, but we've received a tuition increase which basically offset that. This $59 million figure doesn't include any of those kind of cuts. These are the true cuts to our operating budget. Wanted to give you a feel for the history of tax support to the campus's financial plans over the past 8 years. From 03-04 through 07-08, our state tax support has gone up by about $65 million. These were the good years. Things, we were getting additional funding for the state. A lot of this funding was for salary increases, but there was some new money associated in here as well. But then around 7-8, 8-9, things started going the other way. These figures actually represent the true state tax support in our budget. What is kind of masked here is this number here doesn't include the $12.1 million that we're going to have to pay for ourselves. So again, in this respect, our budget wasn't cut by $12 million, but we were faced with the dilemma of having to come up with $12 million to cover those costs ourselves. So what basically was true budget reduction to the campus.
Mark, if I want to make sure I understand you. So in the past, the contractual salary increases for non-management employees at the university were picked up by the state.
Yes.
And this year now the state says the university has to pick it up.
That's correct.
So that's another $12 million hit to us.
Yes. Yes.
Does this increase any rise of salary for grad students, PAs and GAs?
Excuse me,
Does this increase, that this 12 million includes any rise of salary for PAs, GAs, grad students and things?
I believe so, yes. We're covering anything that's contractually, we're contractually bound to pay for, including the TAs and GA increases, we're going to have to pay for ourselves. What we wanted to show here was basically, okay, how has the state support for each of our enrolled students changed over the past 6 years? If we look at the dark blue bars, that represents the actual funding that the campus has received in state support in our financial plans. So our actual support, starting from 05-06 down to 10-11, went down by 9%. You could say only 9%, but it decreased by 9%. But there's something hidden in here that kind of a graph does not accommodate. What has our actual spending power been? What has been the change in spending power for each of our students? And by that, if you take out the funding we receive for those salary increases, the funding we've received to pay for our utility bills and certain other inflationary items, which don't provide us with any money to actually do anything new, it's basically just covering the costs that the university has to pay for. Our funding for our for every one of our enrolled students has actually gone down by 55% since fiscal year 05-06. So given that $59 million budget reduction we're forced to deal with, what kind of things has the campus done to deal with it? We'll be talking about Southampton later, but these are the specific things that the university has implemented to deal with these massive budget reductions. We've implemented a non-faculty hiring freeze. That's been in effect for 10 months. We're closing 401 Park Avenue. That's the site in Stony Brook, Manhattan. We're eliminating ongoing rehab and repair funds for the campus. We're reducing our graduate student recruiting by 20%. That's 76 positions. We're reducing our number of course sections by 12% in the past 2 years. We closed the cytotechnology program, eliminating positions in DoIT, HR, and procurement. And DoIT, that's our Department of Information Technology, so our information infrastructure is being hit. The routine and general maintenance is being dramatically reduced on campus. Reducing funds supporting preventative maintenance. We're going to wind up paying additional money in the future because we haven't put the money in for preventative maintenance to maintain our systems here on campus. We cut state funds to administrative units between 20 and 40%. I'll show you how that looks in a slide a little later. We've implemented a couple of employee separation incentive plans, early retirement incentives here. This is our own campus plans to try and get people off the payroll. The state has had its own early retirement incentive program that took place this summer and fall, and we've even reduced mail deliveries here on campus by 50%. So after all of the actions that were taken to address that $59 million in cuts, all the things we just listed on the other slide in Southampton, where are we now? We began this year, after having taken all of those important actions, still facing a budget gap of $30 million this year. This is the base ongoing budget gap. We're projecting that that gap is going to grow by $10 million next year because, as others have said, the state of New York is still facing extremely difficult financial times. I was in Albany on Friday, and the SUNY budget director told our group that the state is still facing a deficit next year of about $8 to $9 billion. But we're estimating here on campus, our share of that will be somewhere around 10 million. So our base, deficit is growing from 30 to 40 million as part of our projections. To deal with that, we've implemented 2 cuts to our campus operating areas. We had a first phase 1 cut of $13.5 million, cut everybody's bases by $13.5 million. We then waited a little while, tried to get a feel for what the budget situation looked like in New York State, and then we decided, no, that wasn't enough. We have to actually cut more. So we cut the areas another $6.5 million after that 13. So this year we cut the areas $20 million between these 2 cuts. But as you can see, that still left us with an unresolved budget gap this year of $10 million. We're now looking at ways to address that this year. But if we don't address it and we don't come up with another $10 million to plug that hole, that $10 million is basically going to be added on to next year's situation. So we'll be still facing a $30 million gap next year. So we've taken massive cuts, distributive massive cuts here on campus, but we still are facing very difficult financial times going forward. These are unprecedented reductions in my 25 years here working in the budget office, and it's a very painful situation. Wanted to give you a feel for the average of the total reductions taken between the academic areas and the administrative areas, and the cuts we've distributed on campus have not been assigned in a pro rata portion. Our academic areas, the average cut to them have come in at about 13.9%. This is 3 years worth of cuts. The average cut to our administrative areas came in at 22%, 22.6%. So that's not 100%, higher than the academic areas, but it is reasonable to say that the cuts to our administrative areas were more than 60% larger than the cuts to our academic areas. We're trying to do whatever we can possible to protect the academic mission of the university, but it's still, even that area has been faced with tremendous financial budget reductions. That's it. Any questions?
Well, thanks, Mark, for all of that depressing news. I like the lacrosse team presentation and Cheryl's presentation much better. Does anybody have any questions for Mark?
Mark, just as the ratio in order to make up for the salary with the, wasn't it just the people in contractual obligations with the union that you need to reimburse their raise only? I wasn't sure it was the doctoral fellows or the part-time.
Anything that's contractual, if it's a contractual agreement, we reimburse the area. So if it's somebody giving additional money to a graduate student for additional support that's not contractually mandated, we don't reimburse those kind of costs. But if it's a mandated contractual issue,
yes, you're obligated.
Those are the ones we have to cover.
That's what I think.
John?
Mark. Enrollment's up since 2006. We saw a slide, maybe 20%. Total staffing on campus, what happened to that since 2006? Just numbers of people. Do we have that number?
I don't have it handy. There has been, to accommodate that enrollment, there has to have been growth, in the academic areas to teach the classes and stuff like that. There have been reductions in other areas, like the ones mentioned on that slide, our HR department, procurement, information technology area. So where some areas may have grown a bit, others are coming down. We're expecting that our filled payrolls are really going to start coming down due to the early retirement plans and the fact that given the kind of cuts that we have been distributing, they have to come down. For our areas to balance their budgets, a number of people are going to have to leave the payroll in some fashion.
Mark, thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're going to go to old business. And the only item on business is Southampton College campus. Some of you might have heard of those issues lately. It's obviously something that we've all been struggling with over the past several months. And what I'm going to do here, just to
Use the microphone, please.
excuse me?
Microphone.
Use
Peter,
your microphone.
Peter, you can't hear me from there?
I'm having difficulty.
Okay. For the old business, we're going to first have our CFO and our current budget director, Carol and Dan, just give a little bit of the history from the decisions that were made in 2005, and then some of the financial issues associated with the college from Dan, our budget director. I'm then going to ask Dr. Stanley to talk about his decision in the spring. I am then going to ask Eric Kaler to talk about the committee that is reviewing plans, currently for the campus. And so why don't we start off with Carol Bray for a presentation. Thank you, Carol.
Welcome. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to spend a few minutes just briefing everyone on the background of the Southampton campus. And I'd like to begin by going through a quote that appeared in Newsday on July 18, 2004. And that quote begins with, "On June 15th, with Southampton's college deficit for the next year projected at $12 million, the highest in 40 years of losses, the trustees effectively shut down school. They voted to transfer its undergraduate programs to their C.W. Post campus in Brookville, beginning with the fall semester of 2005. Some facts about the Long Island University back at that time. The university tuition was $21,000. They had approximately 983 undergraduate students enrolled. They projected the year-end loss for 2004 to be approximately $11 million. Some history on the acquisition of the property. On September 2005, the SUNY Board of Trustees approved the resolution to acquire the property for $35 million. The site was purchased on March of 2006 and officially transferred to Stony Brook University in October of 2006. I'd like to just share with you the resolution that was approved by the University Council on September 9, 2005. And if you allow me, I will read to you the quote from the Stony Brook Council. The council restates its view, shared by President Kenny, that the acquisition must not divert resources required to maintain and build upon the strength and excellence created by Stony Brook University under the leadership of President Kenny and her administration.
Excuse me, Carol. Do you have copies of this presentation to make it easier for the board?
I could make copies and get it to you, yes.
Oh, they're not, okay, they're not here now. Okay.
I would like to turn over the rest of the presentation to Dan Malucci to discuss the financial background.
Good morning. In the original business model that was developed when Stony Brook took over the Southampton campus, there were 4 primary revenue components that were critical to balancing the business plan. The first one, which of course is enrollment driven, resulting in important tuition revenue. So the first one is enrollment. Then there were two components of state support. The first was that we knew in the early years we were going to require transition funding because the enrollment was going to be very low to begin with, and we needed extra revenue to support the startup costs. Third was we were anticipating a state support amount per FTE, per full-time equivalent student. At the time, SUNY's budget model was largely driven by enrollment, and that had been supporting the entire campus, and we anticipated when we made the acquisition that that model would continue to function for Southampton students. And the fourth primary revenue component was philanthropy. We anticipated that a certain amount of donor support was going to be available to the Southampton campus. So when we developed our business plan for the first 4 years, the first year was very much a transition year, then running out for the next 3. The last year being the 2009-2010 fiscal year. I've highlighted in red the impact of those 4 primary revenue components, and you can see that they comprise the vast majority of the total revenue. So what happened in our actual experience compared to what that original business plan had projected? In the area of tuition, our enrollment growth, and we just go back to this slide for a second and highlight the enrollment projection up at the top. We thought we would have 200 students in the first year, growing to 800, then 1,200, then 1,600. You recall Carol mentioned that LAU had 900 and some odd students in their final year, but they had, in years past, had enrollment as high as 15 or 1,600. So we thought these were reasonable expectations. So back to these 4 revenue components. Enrollment, which we projected to be 1,600 for the 2009-2010 academic year, actually came in at 477 students. These are head count students. Included in the 477 are some part-timers. So the result of that much lower tuition enrollment meant that the $9.1 million that we had projected in the original business plan for tuition was coming in at $2.4 million.
Could you go back to the previous slide, please?
Sure. This one?
Yeah. What academic year are we talking about here?
This is the 2009, sorry, hold it.
Okay.
Let me get back to this. This is the 2009-2010 academic year.
Dan,
Yes.
just to interrupt you, how many of those were really living on campus and how many of them were kind of?
I believe 185 of the 477 were in the residence halls. Peter, does that sound like the right number?
For the spring count, yes.
For the spring of 2010. Any other questions? Okay. So the enrollment was not what we had planned. And the consequential reduction in tuition was dramatic. The state support per student FTE did not materialize. The SUNY budget model was frozen as budgets became very difficult statewide, and as budget cuts began to hit us the last 3 years, there were no funds within the SUNY model, nor did any come from the state of New York to satisfy this $6.4 million projection. What we did receive as a total of $1.7 million was some utility support and salary increases for the staff. The fundraising expectations, we had budgeted $1 million a year, came in at approximately $1 million in total for the 4-year period, and of that amount, almost half was for capital improvements, so that just over $500,000 was generated from philanthropy that could go towards the actual operating costs of Southampton College. So those 3 primary revenue components, tuition, state support, and philanthropy came in well below what our original 2006 business plan had projected. So where did that leave us? That left us with a campus Stony Brook campus of a $300 million budget, 24,000 student headcount, or a state budget per student of $12,000. And in Southampton campus, we have $14 million in expenditures for 477 students. So we're actually spending almost $30,000 per student at Southampton, and we're spending $12,000 per student on Stony Brook's main campus. So we're spending 2.4, almost 2.5 times more in Southampton than we were on the main campus. I'm going to leave it up to the chair if you want. People are raising their hands.
No, we're not engaging right now. There'll be a public portion, a limited public portion soon.
So this is just a graphic display of those two cost components, cost per student. So what do the actual financials look like in 2009? This is a simplified financial. It shows the total revenue was $4.1 million. That's a combination of tuition and state support. Total state expenses for operating the campus, including instructional and administrative and facilities, etc., were $12.7 million. We had a net cost of $1.4 million for food service and residential operations, so that we had a total all funds cost of $14 million against $4.1 million in revenue. We lost just under $10 million to operate the campus in the 2009-2010 fiscal year. The losses required, again, were $10 million. Now, that was a campus subsidy. That was funds that we had to absorb on the main campus in order to fulfill our obligations at Southampton. The main campus students also subsidized the meal plan by $437,000 per year. In other words, the revenue generated by students purchasing food, whether it's on the meal plan or in cash, fell $437,000 short of covering the costs of providing that food. So of the roughly 220 students who were actively on the meal plan and using that facility, they had to be subsidized by almost $2,000 per student. And a very similar situation came to pass in the residences, where the residence halls had a $1.1 million deficit. Remember, there's some significant debt service requirements as those residential halls had to be refurbished to a great degree. And there were only 185 students residing on campus. So that subsidy amounted to $5,000 per year that was subsidized by the main campus.
And Dan, just to clarify, just to make sure everybody understands, that money came from the fees that students on this campus were paying essentially for room.
Yes, this $1.1 million that was a deficit at Southampton. The residential operations in state university campuses are self-sustaining. There has to be sufficient revenue accumulated by rentals, by rental payments, in order to pay for all the costs of operation, including utilities and custodial and maintenance and debt service and everything that goes into running residential operations. So at Southampton, when looking at that campus alone, the revenue fell $1.1 million short of meeting all the expenses to run the dormitories. So that $1.1 million had to be absorbed by the students at Stony Brook. Now there are almost 8,000 beds at Stony Brook, so when you spread that cost out over 8,000, it's about $125 per student. But when you look at it from a perspective of what was the subsidy required for the 185 students at Southampton, it comes to $5,000 per student. Okay. So the reprioritizing initiative at Southampton, the restructuring that was implemented for this year, took this almost $10 million deficit, and at full implementation of that restructuring will bring that loss down to $3.3 million for a savings of $6.6 million. The That will take us several years to achieve the actual 6.6. We track very carefully the cost components at Southampton. Remember, probably 75 to 80% of the expense of operating the campus is salaries. Many of the individuals employed there had contracts or union support where they could not be immediately terminated. The temporary employees or the adjuncts were terminated immediately. And we are in the process of replacing some of those individuals at campus jobs where people were recruiting for someone with similar skill sets, and we moved Southampton people into those jobs. And in some cases, we're waiting for contracts to expire. So I'm pleased to report that this year, 2010, 2011, we dropped this $10 million loss by $4 million. So we're already saving $4.1 million of the 6.6, but it's probably going to take us at least 2 more years to get that down to $6.7 million in actual savings. And I believe that's it.
So out of the $59 million in state aid cuts, this is helping us to the tune of 6.6, eventually $4 million already.
Yes, that's correct. We looked at the 6.6 as a way to address the $59 million in a base, in an ongoing way. Knowing that we're only going to get $4 million this year, we're looking at one-time methods of closing the rest of that 6.6 million. But the answer to your question is yes. The 6.6 goes against the 59.
Do any council members have any questions for Dan?
I have a question, Dan.
Yes.
Refresh my memory on the tuition that the Southampton students paid, and is it the same as we pay here on the main campus?
It is exactly the same.
The same. What about the residential fees? Were they the same as we're paying here on this campus?
Yes, they were. Same rates.
Is there any influence with a smaller campus that you could increase the residential fees for that campus as opposed to what we're experiencing here because of the offset?
That would be possible. Peter, I don't know if you want to address that question. We have the flexibility within our student guidelines to charge higher rates. There are competitive issues, et cetera. So we did look at that. President Kenny did not want to charge a differential tuition rate. So that's some history of it, but we could. Peter,
Yeah.
any thoughts?
Could you tell us how much space we have to do that, or is that something that is a formula that's calculated?
It's not full.
Peter, state your name and your title for the record, please, and
Thank you.
come to the podium.
Morning. Peter Bajan, Vice President for Students and Associate Provost for Enrollment and Retention Management. Gene, yes, what we do is each year go through a very detailed analysis with the Residence Hall advisory groups for the Residence Halls large, which included Southampton, and
These are students.
these are students.
Oh, students.
Yeah. And the graduate students for Chapin, graduate students for Schomburg, and then also the West Department. And we look at what are required expenses, that would be salaries, utilities, paying off paper, mortgages, those sorts of pieces. And students sometimes will say, we really want to add, in the last few years, we've added wireless, we've added some other sorts of facilities in the campus, and we arrive at a number that reflects what the cost of enrollment was, of residence was. As Dan said, President Kenny did not want to have a differential rate between Southampton and Stony Brook. It was something I sort of suggested, but it was a decision that was hers to make. So in a real sense, we could, if need be, and this is certainly what I'm looking at the moment for when we think about repurposing, and Eric could talk about, establishing Southampton as a tub on its own bottom, which would, in many ways, probably just about double the cost of residence for that environment as against the Stony Brook environment, based on large numbers and new money expenses.
Average current rental for
Five and change.
$5,000, so with a
what is-
$5,000 deficit, you'd have to charge $10,000 in order to break even.
So
at
10,000 for the year, or
Yes.
is that a semester?
Per year.
A year?
Yeah,
Okay.
2 semesters.
So it would have to be, which is now 5,000, it would be doubled to 10,
Yeah.
which doesn't really give us all the relief that, you know, the budget
It's just a
requires.
little more
It's
side.
just a little more.
It just takes care of $1 million.
Yeah, this is the
that's-
residence hall piece.
Yes.
I mean,
I understand.
it's new build, small numbers. Here we got old money.
Yes.
Leonard Benedict?
Yeah. I think we should be looking in terms of long-term fixing the problem, because taking 1 million from here, 2 million from there is just quick fix.
Yeah.
We should be looking in terms of long-term. What happens to the university if we continue to spend money like that, where we don't have it?
Any other questions from the council? Frank Trotta?
Yeah, you talked about a business plan and not achieving the goals of that business plan. Could you talk about the execution of that business plan and what went into trying to achieve goals? In other words, we had goals. How did we try to, what did we do to try to reach those goals
So in terms
during
of
the process?
recruitment of students.
Yes, yes.
All of those things that, in other words, if we had a business plan and we said we're going to do A, B, C, and D, what did we do to try to reach those goals in the process before the academic year started? What was the full academic year that started under when Stony Brook took over?
Well,
The first full year.
We had anticipated when we were first developing the business plan that there would be some enrollment for the 2006-2007 fiscal year. And if you recall from the plan, we had projected 200 students in that year. In fact, by the time we actually received approval and we owned the facility, it was already into the fall of 2006, and it was way too late to recruit any students. So we really lost that first year from an academic standpoint. Yet, of course, we now had title to the facility, and we needed to start maintaining it and making improvements, et cetera. So there were a number of costs that took place in that first year, which was 06-07, with very little revenue to offset it. So we got off in a negative start because of the delay in actually gaining title.
And also, let me clarify, these were not goals of the council, these were assumptions that you had that were in the business plan.
These are assumptions that we built into the business plan, correct.
Well, but yes, and
Yes.
and the assumptions are based on an action plan of trying to achieve those assumptions.
Right.
And
Right.
my question was, what was the action plan that we understand the failure, we understand now that, we started in 06-07 was the first year. We understand that the approval for Stony Brook to take over the campus got a late start, and so from day one, those goals could not have been met. But from that point forward, or for year 2, 07-08, what was done to try to realistically address the goals that were set by the university?
So let me just make a comment. So, I mean, I think obviously several of these things were beyond our control. And that, of course, is the state budget and the allocation per student. So
Yes.
we have no control over that. We had no control over the tuition, as you know. So one thing that would have helped, of course, in terms of increasing revenue, would have been an increase in tuition. And we had no control over that as well. So I would say what we had control over was the academic programs that would be there, and the marketing and recruitment of students to come to the campus. I would say those things. Plus, efforts in philanthropy, if you look at the business model, would be the things we would have had control over. So having not been there at the beginning, I will ask Peter to talk a little bit about recruiting efforts for students, what was done in terms of advertising, in terms of trying to promote the campus so that it would be seen as an attractive place to attend.
Because I would think that the marketing plan for a small college campus as Southampton is very different than a large research university like Stony Brook, and so
Yeah,
the approach has got to be
you'll learn
totally
there
different.
was a different approach, and Peter, and if there's anybody else on the senior staff who wants to add in, please should.
So as Dan said, we didn't get state ed approval till November '06. Hired a recruitment staff, a well-qualified, seasoned recruitment staff. In the spring of 2007, we purchased 50,000 names, which we went after for the fall. You've got to remember that this was really a re-startup with a hiatus, and we were at the same time recruiting, at the same time developing majors. So for the fall of 2007, we only had the SOMAS majors in the
School of Marine and
Atmospheric Sciences.
Thank you.
And the next year, we developed some of the sustainability majors. There was, I think, a lot of optimism that this would be a very attractive site, given the buzz that was in the air and still in the air on the general issue of sustainability within the context of the national economy, green, etc., etc. Despite all the efforts of the admissions office and our need for quality, because it's one campus, so the same faculties, the same criteria. The projections of being able to go from 400 to 800 just never panned out. We were really, in the same time, rebuilding the residence hall infrastructure. So the first year, the admissions office was in many ways showing buildings where you could look through them to prospective students. So it was this enormous startup, evolving process that just did not generate the numbers that were in the prospective plan. I mean, in a real sense, a business plan 4 years later can look very different as to how good it is when you launching it. And we did do a lot of adaptation, a lot of massaging of that.
But there was publicity, there was articles about the campus, there were specific brochures and marketing that was set up. It had its own set of brochures that went out to prospective students. So it was differentiated potentially as a separate campus from the main campus, and that effort was put forward.
Webs, the normal arsenal of recruitment vehicles that you use and we use here.
Dr. Stanley?
Mr. Howard.
In what point in the timeline did this become your charge?
When I became president of the university, Mr. Howard, July 1st, 2009. No, not being silly, July 1st, 2009.
In fact, actually, Lou, that's a great question. You know, Sam, long ago now, I wanted to hear some of the history, the Carol, and some of the financial information. But Sam, what happened this spring and early this spring that led you to make the decision that you did regarding Southampton?
I'm sorry. Could we finish the questions? Could we go back and?
What's your question, Frank?
Well, we were talking about, one part of it was recruitment. Second part was fundraising, and we were going to address that.
We dealt with state aid. We dealt with the advertising marketing. On the donor?
Yeah, that's certainly.
Eric Dobell, do you want to comment on that? Or,
and then we'll go to Dr. Stanley. I'm sorry, Mr. Trotter.
That's right.
Eric, let's be brief. I got to move this thing along. We got a lot of people.
Eric Dobell, Vice President, or Interim Vice President, I should say, of advancement. We did hire a Director of Development for Stony Brook, Southampton specifically. Very experienced, 19 years of experience on fundraising on the East End as well as Westchester, and things were moving along. But it takes time to raise money, to build relationships, and kind of things don't happen overnight.
So we're moving forward.
when was
It
the
would have taken years to really,
But I think it's worth saying that there was optimism about the possibility of fundraising for this. There was significant optimism particularly because of the transition, there's a feeling that people in the community would be willing to donate perhaps. There's been tremendous excitement about the possibility of saving the campus, and that led to optimism. That did not materialize, and that was a major focus of President Kenny when she was in charge. It was a major focus of the development office. But at the end of the day, we had no major gifts come to support the campus. And that's very important to say, and just say right out. There were certainly efforts made, outreach made. Donors had been identified, particularly people who had expressed public support, very well-known people. Of course, I can't mention their names. But that part did not materialize. And so we never came close. As you saw, $1 million was raised. Only half of that was potential for operating. And what's important to say is none of that was for endowment. So if you look at that plan, which called for $1 million per year in fundraising, really the only way to achieve that consistently would have been to achieve a $25 million or so endowment, which never happened. So that really, I have to say, was probably not realistic, but there was a full court press done. And if you think about the numbers, you think about you have a small campus, 375 full-time students, 400 whatever it is headcount, to have a full-time development director devoted to it tells you the kind of effort that was put in towards trying to raise money for this.
When was the director hired?
she's, let's see, just June of 2008, I believe. We had a search around from that year.
But there was activity going from the regular advancement.
We interviewed almost 100 people trying to find
Yeah, Carol. Identify yourself.
I'm Carol Gray. Eric and I kind of, he came in a little later, but even though they hired a full-time director in the period that he's just stated, there were fundraisers from this campus that were assigned to the fundraising efforts out at Southampton.
All right, well then that leads us to this this spring. Dr. Stanley, let me hand it over to you now. And just, for those wondering well, actually, let's hear from Dr. Stanley, then we're going to go to Dr. Kayla, and then I'll let you know how the rest of the meeting is going to go.
Okay. So, as everybody knows, and you've heard today about the budget situation, and I came to Stony Brook extraordinarily excited about what we can do, and I remain extraordinarily excited about what we can do. This is a fantastic institution. It has wonderful faculty, students, and staff, and I think, as you've heard, we've been on an amazing trajectory over the past decade, and it's been, as I said, wonderful for me to have the opportunity to lead this great institution. But when I came, obviously I was faced with an extraordinary budget situation. I think unprecedented, as you've heard before, in the history of Stony Brook and SUNY in the state. So I began by creating what I called a budget working group, consisting of the provost, the vice president for finance, the budget directors, and the vice president for facilities, later the dean of the School of Medicine. And I asked them to generate options for dealing with this budget crisis. What were the options we could take? And I asked them to be guided by the underlying principle of minimizing impact on the fundamental teaching and scholarship missions of the university while meeting our fiscal responsibilities. We had to be fiduciarily responsible. I asked them to look at every program on the campus, go through every program we had on campus, leave nothing unturned, go through everything. Academic, administrative, every program should be looked at. The budget working group looked at a number of programs, and one of the programs examined, and one of the programs that came to light, because of its severe deficits, as you've heard today, $10 million, extraordinary cost per student, twice, more than nearly two and a half times the cost of educating a student on that campus versus this campus, came to the attention of the budget working group. And they recommended, after full discussion with the vice president for students, and we wanted the vice president for students involved as well, recommended relocating the sustainability majors and the residential components from the undergraduate programs at Southampton to the main campus. As you've learned today, the estimate was at full implementation that this would save about $6.7 million annually. Importantly, and this is important for all of us, the provost and the vice president for students really made clear that the sustainability majors could be continued on this campus and that all students would have a path to graduation. And they also pointed out that they hoped a positive outcome of this would be more course opportunities for the students who transferred. because there are more courses available on this campus, as well as more course opportunities for our students, for the students on this campus, who would have the opportunity again to be engaged in the sustainability majors, which was a program that we were interested in. It was also made clear, though, in this decision, and it's very important to say this again and again, that the highly successful and unique marine science station at Southampton should be maintained and even possibly expanded in the future because of its unique nature and its high degree of success. And the internationally renowned Writers' Workshop and MFA program in creative writing also be supported and potentially expanded as very successful programs that are unique to that campus. You can't do those things in other places. The sustainability majors, we came to the conclusion we could do on this campus. We really came to that conclusion, and that's what we decided to do. At no time, let me be clear, at no time was closure or sale of the campus considered. So this is the recommendation that came to me from the budget working group, and I accepted this recommendation and take responsibility for the decision. It was an extraordinarily difficult decision for all of us, because we knew there would be a real sense of loss and even anger from the affected students and their families. But at the end, we felt, and I still feel absolutely today, that we had to be fiscally responsible to the university and to the state, and we had to be fair to the 25,000 students on this campus. As you've learned, we've been on a tremendous trajectory. Our enrollment of students is the best classes we've ever had. We're making progress in so many areas. You learned about sponsored research, now more than $200 million. The quality of our students continues to improve. And the things we can offer them in terms of these facilities on campus, in spite of the kind of cuts we have, we've worked very hard to maintain. And we have some special programs like EOP that I really want to defend and potentially grow. So with all of these things in mind, I felt that this was the right decision to make for Stony Brook. And it's a decision we made and have implemented. And that's important to say. Now, I had a chance to talk to everybody about this on May 11th, so I'm repeating some of the things I've said before, and I know you've heard many of these things before. But I think this was absolutely the right decision to make, given all of the things that we're confronted with. And I would add, if one remembers that September 9th, 2005 resolution of the Stony Brook Council that directed that resources not be diverted from this campus, not interrupt the trajectory of this campus to support the Southampton campus, I think this decision was completely consistent with that resolution from the council. So I now ask Provost Kaler to comment on the current status of the campus as well as planning for the repurposing of the Southampton campus.
Thank you. To amplify briefly on,
state your title.
Oh, I'm sorry, Eric Kaler, I'm the provost. I have my own title.
Get your
Thank
own.
you, Carol. Now I'm official. To amplify some of the President's comments, we did move these majors here. There is a path to graduation for all of the students. There clearly are some bumps on the road for some individuals. We've reached out and continue to reach out to the students with offers of advisement. Martin Shonen has taken on the leadership of the sustainability programs. He was intimately involved in creating the curriculum to begin with. But during this transition, there have been bumps. We have had to cancel a small number of very low enrollment classes, 2 or 3 student classes, as we would do for any academic program on this campus in order to be responsible about providing resources. Intellectually, I think the connection of the sustainability programs to this campus is very important and really should not be underestimated. In order to enact sustainability, a connection with the social sciences, and particularly a connection with engineering, is extremely valuable. Those outlets were available only in the most limited form at Southampton and can be fully manifested here. In addition, the advantages of this campus in terms of intellectual growth are substantial. The students will now have access to 77 minors. We have 77 minors here to broaden and deepen their education. As was discussed in the May 11th meeting, we put together a planning committee to think about how to use the Southampton campus most advantageously. And the membership of it is listed here. It's a little bit of an eye chart, I apologize. It involves a variety of constituents, particularly Suffolk Community College and Farmingdale, our nearby SUNY colleagues, as well as the maritime campus of SUNY has been interested in collaborating with us. The campus, the system has recognized the importance of purposing the campus appropriately, and so David LaValle, who's the SUNY system-wide provost, is a member. From Stony Brook, Barbara Chernow, the Vice President for Facilities, and Craig Lehman, the Dean of our Health Technology College, have joined me. We have several representatives from the community, Steve Kinney, Bob Martin, Laura Sillerman, Richard Warren, Michael White, and Kenneth Wright. In addition, Bob Martin, who's here, and Michael White both chair Dean's Councils for different colleges. Bob was chairing the Southampton Dean's Council, and Michael the SOMAS Dean's Council. Prior to the judge's ruling, which enjoined us from continuing for planning of uses of the campus, we had also, Diana and I had visited with many elected representatives on the East End, and we had planned to continue that as a way to reach out into the community and to make our deliberations wide open and available to input from the Southampton community. The goal that the committee agreed is to develop plans for programs that are financially sustainable, consistent with the university mission, and making full use of the existing facilities including the dormitories. The first step in that, and I liken this to creating a three-legged stool. The legged stool is pretty stable. It can withstand some abuse, and that stability built on a first leg of the existing programs, the excellence in the campus for the arts. There's a history of strength in creative writing, in particular at Southampton. Bob Reeves is an exceptional academic leader, and he has pulled together an outstanding group that brings world-famous writers to Southampton. This past summer, there were 247 participants in the writing program, and when you include faculty, visitors, and other people taking part in that activity, there were well over 300 people on the Southampton campus. As part of our general expansion of graduate programs at Stony Brook, the Master's in Creative Writing program was targeted for growth, and this fall, 88 students are registered in that Master's program. The second important leg of the stool, as the President mentioned, is our excellent program in marine sciences. The Marine Vertebrate Biology program is actually unique in the nation. An effective marine studies program obviously needs access to water, and the Marine Station at Southampton provides that to us. It's undergoing renovation, and it will continue to be an important and vibrant part of our academic mission. There are many students and SOMAS majors now taking courses at the Marine Station. We also have received a proposal for what we're calling a semester at the sea. It is the equivalent of a study abroad program, only it's a study at Southampton program. We can make this available to SUNY students and through the National Student Exchange to students from across the nation. We think the opportunity to come spend a semester at Southampton, study marine issues intensively, four courses of focused study with a research component leading to a certificate or to for appropriate SUNY students to a minor would be an extremely attractive opportunity, and of course that would be a residential program. The third leg of the stool is not as well developed, and again we have been mindful of the judge's order, and so not been able to move these discussions forward as far as we would like. But proposals at hand include continuing in professional education to meet community needs, an element of education in the health sciences area, community health, e-health, nursing programs, and obviously the university campus has been an important mecca for cultural events and provides an opportunity to host lifelong learning programs that will be of use to the community. And others to be identified and discussed as we move forward with a planning exercise. So I'll conclude with a restatement or a paraphrase of the long-term goal, which is to produce a financially sustainable campus with quality programs. The campus is a wonderful resource for Stony Brook, and I'm committed to finding ways to make it work.
Eric, thank you. So, contrary to some of the media reports that have been out there for the last few months, the campus was not closed.
No.
Some programs were moved to the main campus. Several programs still exist at Southampton, and we are doing everything we can to find other programs that would make sense there, including a residential component.
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, what I want to do now is, again, for those who weren't here in the beginning, I explained to you the role of the council and what our job is and how we're different from maybe other boards that you may have appeared before. You know, we're an advisory council. We never have, nor are we legally required to take public participation and take public comment. But a number of you have reached out to me and to other members of the council over the past few weeks. And while I can't let everybody here speak, I am going to allow for some public participation now to hear some of your thoughts. And then, as everybody knows, there's litigation involved here. Our lawyers are here. After some public participation, we're going to go into executive session to be briefed by our attorneys on the status of the litigation, and then we'll return from executive session as well. But in terms of the public participation, I'm going to allow, and again, it's always comes with some mixed emotions because you can't please everybody. But I'm going to go first in terms of some protocol that is customary among public bodies. If there are any elected officials in the room, I'm going to allow them to come forward. And given the time, given the amount of people who are here, and consistent with other protocols for other public bodies, the public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. And Carol, or if somebody's taking time, and we're going to try to hold to that. And so I'm going to acknowledge a dear friend, somebody I've worked with the last 25 years, I see, waiting in the wings, is State Assemblyman Fred Thiel. And then I'm going to, just so you're prepared, on deck, I'm going to ask Van Magipinto from Save the College at Southampton to speak next, reminding everybody of our 3-minute rule. Mr. Assemblyman.
Thank you, Kevin. I will speak fast. And I thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak. I would just say this first. Let us not lose track of the fact that a judge declared the decision of the president to be illegal. And part of the reason why it was declared to be illegal was that not only was the council not informed of what was happening beforehand, but neither were elected officials or the community. And there is a difference between presenting objective information for people to make objective decisions and presenting statistics after the fact to try to rationalize a decision. And that's what happened for nearly an hour here this morning. The numbers that were presented to you today are somewhat different than the numbers that were presented to Senator LaValle, Congressman Bishop, and myself after the fact back in April and May. I would just start out by saying that. In addition, not only were those numbers different, but there seems to be missing from the numbers now a $6 or $7 million subsidy for the campus that Senator LaValle had identified and had been carried over. Those are no longer in these numbers. I don't want to spend all of my 3 minutes talking about the past. I want to talk about the future of this campus. And I would urge this body not to rush to judgment. There is pending litigation. Everything can be stayed by the state simply filing a notice of appeal. We want to work together for the future of this campus. If there's one thing that all of us share, it's the future of this campus. You know, I could point out that, you know, you mentioned your development director started in 2008. Mary Pearl didn't show up until late in the process either. The plan failed because Stony Brook was late in getting the plan started. But that, again, is behind us. And let us work together. Please don't rush to judgment today. let's work together. Let's not make hasty decisions again that are going to result in further litigation. I would simply ask the council today to defer any action today. I know that is also the position of Senator LaValle. We spoke before today. There's also the position of Congressman Bishop. Please defer any action today. Certainly, if there is an action by the state to file an appeal and stay everything, that's fine. That will give us time to work on this thing. The last thing I would just mention, it sounded as if Bob Martin and his group there, the council, was somehow precluded by the litigation from continuing to work on the future of this campus. All that the court decision said was that you were enjoined from closing the campus. That doesn't mean that you can't continue to have discussions about what the future of this campus is. And that is a rather unique interpretation of what the court ruled. So again, let me just conclude by saying we would hope you would defer any action today. Let us work together to try to find the solutions that are needed. There are some interesting things that were presented by Eric Taylor as far as the future of this campus. And I think we can come to something that is a consensus rather than a conflict, and I think that's what we should be doing. I just want to, my last point, I know my 3 minutes are probably up, but let us not forget, as we're planning for the future of this campus, the students that are on that campus, that were on that campus last year, to which this institution made promises to them and their families, promises that they relied on to now, to some degree, to their economic detriment because they forwent scholarships and other opportunities at other universities. Let us not forget those students as we're looking to the future of what happens on this campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Senators Field, V. Anthony Mangiapinto from Save the College at Southampton, Inc. And on deck will be Jasper Willison.
Morning, everyone. Good to see you all. I was a graduate. I received my bachelor's degree from Southampton College in 1970. Before I went on to law school, I was served as the assistant dean of admissions there, so I know the campus pretty well. I was with the Alumni Association, president of it for a while. In 2004, when the shock waves of the imminent closing of the campus by LIU radiated through Long Island, we formed up. And my predecessor, Harry Marmion, a member of your group, who helped us so much, adds luster to this particular body as we all view it, was very instrumental in helping us to go forward and achieving our goals. I offer you 3 hallmarks of Save the College at Southampton. First of all is our diversity. We are alumni, former faculty, staff, members of the community, including political representatives. Secondly, we possess a vast variety of knowledge. We're imaginative and inquisitive. We have a long-standing familiarity with adversity. Our third hallmark is our fervor. We have a passionate commitment to that special place on the South Fork, the terminal moraine of a land known as Long Island, which is the Southampton campus, overlooking Shinnecock Bay. Since the 1960s, the community of the 5 eastern towns has worked and sought to promote a residential college at that location. What SAVE offers today and in the days and weeks and months to come is, first of all, our history of success in continuing what we set out to do, the residential campus there at Southampton. Number 2, our willingness, indeed our enthusiasm, to meet the challenges that are in front of us. We don't shirk from them, we stand up to them and work to meet them. Third, our commitment in promoting the further continuation of a residential campus there. What we ask of the council is to remain seized of the issue, to take a hard look, to keep it on its agenda, including the recognition of those unique features of any startup. I mean, we're only at this a few years, and already, it's the obituary time. Give it some time. That's what we're asking for. We're asking you to understand that we're ready here to help and to be available to you in a wide variety of methods. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr.
I have a few comments to make. I just wondered if that would be appropriate, or?
Matt, we're all going to have a chance, to deliberate, soon. But if you wanted to make a point now, I don't want to preclude that. But I was trying to get a handful of people from the public to speak, to have them opportunity. But if you wanted to set the stage for the next speaker, or
Would that be all right?
Yeah, sure.
All right, thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Graham. I'm president of the undergrad student government. I'm the student voting member of the council. I've been involved with this issue since the news first came out last April. And when it initially came out, I supported the students, and I felt strongly about the way they were mistreated by this decision. They had more than just their college stripped away from them. They had their school stripped away from them, their homes stripped away from them. And all the students, and me included, were angry about that. But since that time, I've had time to hear the argument from both sides of the discussion. I've heard the facts and I've seen the numbers. I've come to the conclusion, after all that the decision to close Southampton, not close Southampton, close the undergraduate portion of Southampton, is in the best interest of the Stony Brook community. No matter how tough it is to hear it, and no matter how tough it is for me to say it, this was a hard decision, but it had to be done. So that's the truth of the matter. You can't avoid the facts. Financially, Southampton wasn't working. We had these presentations, and we can see we set goals, and they weren't met. And with the state abandoning Stony Brook, with the rest of SUNY, with all these budget cuts, and more to come, programs like EOP, caps on undergraduate enrollment, and satellite sites like Southampton and Manhattan are going to continue to be cut. I was elected by the entire undergraduate student body, and as their elected official, it's my duty, my job, to make decisions that are in their best interest. And with that duty in mind, I can't support a decision that wouldn't be sound for the rest of the 25,000 undergraduate student members here on main campus. I think Southampton has a bright future, as Dr. Kaler presented. There's a lot of potential there. And I think Southampton will continue to play an important role as a part of Stony Brook.
Matthew, thank you for your courage and your leadership, and I know that was not an easy thing for you to say. Jasper Wilson. After Jasper, I'm going to hear from a parent who has to speak. Is Teresa Keegan here? I had two parents who asked to speak. No, she's not here. Judy Savon. You're on deck. If you still want to speak.
Thank you for the floor. My name is Jasper Wilson. I am the former president of the undergraduate students last year. When I first heard about this, I actually heard about it from a friend of mine who used to attend Southampton, and he called me and he was distraught. He said, I can't believe the news I heard, and we right on it. And I got in touch with the whole executive board. We did whatever we could to hear about it. And at that point, with the limited information that I had at that point, I was extremely in favor of doing whatever I could to help keep Southampton open. But as we moved forward, more information was presented to me as from my work with the University Senate as well as my work with FSA. And another thing that I heard was really good. From the information from FSA was that the Southampton had just become a financial burden, and as they said in a lot of the presentations, that the money that students were paying from this campus was being used to subsidize it. And we made it a commitment to keep it going as much as we could, but it's hard to ask students who already have enough financial problems to be expanding their problems to that. Further, when I discussed my discussion with the University Senate, a lot of the information there was that, again, the academic departments hadn't been developed properly, and that they were not creating strong path to like good majors, and there was not a lot of cohesion with the main campus, which I was upset to see, that there was not a lot of faculty working with both campuses, that it was working to be a sustainable campus, but ineffectively doing that. So, I mean, the administration took a very hard decision. This is something that we are seeing a lot throughout the country, though. A lot of things we see. From a neighbor right down the street, we see Hofstra had to close its football program. I mean, everybody knows that a football program can be a very big asset to a campus. It's school spirit, a big recruiting factor, and a lot of students got displaced. Kids that I'm sure got scholarships to other colleges and stuff were forced to head other places. And you see the extreme financial crisis. But they did that for the benefit of the whole school. It was something that was losing money. The school couldn't handle it, so we did that together. So personally, on behalf of the students from last year that we talked about this, I would just like to thank the administration for the tough decision they made in such a hard time, and that at Stony Brook, they did everything they possibly could to help the transition be as effective as possible for the students in this tough decision that they had to do. And I know that as we move forward together, Stony Brook will stay strong, and I hope that all the Southampton students can understand it. I'm sorry that they had to go through this, but thank you for understanding everyone.
Jasper, thank you very much. Next, Judy Soman. Yes, you do want to speak?
Yes.
Yes. Please limit it to 3 minutes, please.
My name is Judy Soman, and this is John Bodas, and he's a current student here. Would it be all right if we both spoke?
Well, John, you've had your hand raised for the last half an hour. I couldn't say no to you. But is he taking your turn?
Can we split the 3 minutes?
Sure.
Mr. President, distinguished council members, Honorable Fred Thiel, and esteemed colleagues. On April 6, 2010, our beloved Southampton campus was unilaterally ripped from right under and beneath us. This decision was at the sole discretion and instructions of Stony Brook President Samuel Stanley. This unlawful decision questions the leadership and wisdom of this institution. Mr. President, I offered you the opportunity during our glorious march to Stony Brook University to save face. And apparently we haven't saved face. We've tarnished the reputation of Stony Brook University. Today we saw eloquent figures, and most of them lies. When we met with the provost and Peter Bajan, we were not told the operating budget for last year was $14 million. We were told $11 million. Someone stated, I believe Peter Bajan, that there were 8,000 beds. There were only 240 beds. We were as much capacity as we could be under the new leadership. The budget for FSA was not $437,000, it was $300,000. Or was Kevin Kelly lying to us? This really begs the question that a lot of facts and figures that were given today were not true. And if lies are being told to the Stony Brook Council, these actions must be held accountable. Thank you, President, for the undergraduate student government for speaking, but I was the undergraduate student government president for Southampton, and we did not vote for you. They voted for me. And what I'm curious to know is President Stanley above the law? And what does it say about the Stony Brook Council? Are you just a puppet regime?
My name is Judy Soman, and I'm a parent of a Southampton student. And my concerns are more practical. I see you saving $4 million this year and attempting to save $12 million over the course of many years. And it's not quite adding up for me. You have 477 students this year. I know you admitted something like 400 to 500 students next year. Had you kept that 900 to 1,000 students, that would have been your $4 million that you're saving this year. It would have allowed you to keep the campus going while building your other programs. There is not, of the 3 programs you discussed, you could have done all 3 of them while the campus was currently open, working on its sustainability majors as well as its arts and its marine sciences and its continuing education. I mean, to me, those 3 additional programs are brilliant, and that's exactly what you need to integrate the school into the community, which allows you to build, your $25 million endowment. I think that your original budget was good, but just overly optimistic. I mean, in 4 years, you wanted to get to 1,200 students. It's just not realistic, particularly when you started a year later. It's such a good campus, and it's such a good program, and it's such a priority, and it's such a way to increase Stony Brook's visibility. I've sat here today and been so dazzled by the things that you've done, and there's no reason you can't do that in Southampton as well. You have a success. You just need to give it a few years to pan out. I look at the specifics in your plan, the housing cost, operating at a deficit. The Hamptons, people spend thousands of dollars to be there over the summer. If you had a summer program, you could probably charge as much as you do in a full year for housing, and that would subsidize your housing cost. It just takes a little bit of effort to make this work, and I believe that all of you can do it. And I'd just like you to consider that.
Well, thank you very much. We're not engaging.
What was the student's name? I didn't catch it.
John Bodos.
Tom?
Boden?
You have a question for me, sir?
No, I just want your name.
John Bodos.
John Bodas. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the council, President Stanley. I'm Fred Walter. I'm a professor of astronomy here, and I'm the president of the University Senate. The University Senate meets this afternoon, so we haven't taken up the full issue, but the executive committee discussed this issue over the last few weeks, and we have the following resolution, which I'd like to read into the record. In light of the dramatic reductions to Stony Brook's budget by the New York State Legislature, the Executive Committee of the University Senate at Stony Brook understands and supports President Stanley's decision to restrict the operations of the Southampton campus in order to meet the basic academic and research missions of the university. While the Executive Committee supports the necessity of this decision at this time, it is cognizant of the impact this has had on students who have been negatively impacted by this decision. That's the resolution that the Executive Committee has passed. I should have pointed out at the start, the University Senate represents the faculty, the staff, and the students at this university, so we cover all bases. If I may, I'd like to add a few words from the perspective of a member of the faculty who's been here for 22 years. We've come a very long way. This university is only about 50 years old, and we're currently one of the premier public institutions in the country, if not in the world. Fiscal reality has sunk in. We really haven't had many good times in the 22 years I've been here, but it's gotten particularly bad in the last year. To reiterate what President Stanley said, nothing has been closed. Programs have been moved, plans have been put in abeyance, but nothing has been closed. And the decision that he and Provost Kaler made, we consider to be wise and prudent. We can't go further into debt without destroying programs we have here on the main campus. Southampton is simply an extravagance we cannot afford at this time. We all look forward to the time when our state university system is adequately supported by the state and we can take advantage of opportunities like Southampton. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Okay. Another student, Dennis Audriopolis. Andriopoulos, I'm sorry. And the next student on deck, if she is here, Katie Oseki. Is Katie here? Katie's not here, then the next student.
Katie is here. I'll be speaking in her stead, Caroline Dwyer.
Katie is here or isn't here?
I'm here, but she's going to speak for me.
Okay, I'll let that happen.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, so Dennis.
Yeah, so I'm a senior now. I've been here for 4 years. I'm a pre-med chemistry major. And I mean, everyone saw the numbers earlier. It's like, I really like Southampton. My heart goes out to them. Like, it seems really bad. I mean, they lost everything. But, I mean, you saw the numbers. It's crippling us. Like, in order for Stony Brook to keep its quality high, and like, you know the school, it's like, it's been great, you know? It's like, excellent education and all these things. But, you know, it's like, it seems like it's really bad. Like, it's really hurting us. And, you know, it's like really affecting me. Like, I really hate how, like, these students are like losing their, like, I mean, not necessarily losing their majors, but like, overall. But I'm sorry, it's just, I don't have much to say. That's it.
Thank you very much, Dennis.
Pardon me. I'm the president of Waterbury, the new sustainable campus.
Excuse me?
I'm the president of Water. My name is Julianne Navarre. I'm devoted to the Southampton campus and all the students that represent us, even the Stony Brook students that go to live in Waterbury. I just want to let you know that considering Stony Brook has such high potential.
I'm sorry, hold on. Do you want to speak?
Yes, please.
I'll speak. I'll give you your opportunity. But I said the next speaker would be Katie Osecki. And she and her friend are coming up. And what's your name? Ma'am?
Julianne Navarre.
Deanne?
Julianne.
Julianne. I'll get to you. I promise.
Caroline Dwyer, undergraduate. I think, a few things I just wanted to mention. I wasn't prepared to speak, so I'm sort of going on the fly here, sorry. But, these numbers, why is it every time that budget numbers are shown they're different? Can someone answer that question?
Do you have something, but this is not, I'm allowing you to speak, and so.
Okay,
if you have
well,
something
you
to say,
should all know
say it.
then, the numbers that you're looking at are subject to change every time they come out. Also, the enrollment of Southampton was up. The business plan was moving ahead. You said it was behind due to the fact that the university wasn't open in time. So why weren't those numbers ever adjusted? Also, you talk about diverting funds from the main campus. Weren't students from the main campus allowed to attend classes at Southampton? Yes, they were. Why is that a diversion of their educational, or funds for their educational experience when they were allowed to share in that experience? I don't really understand how that's taking anything away from them. It sounds to me like that's adding to what they would gain from attending Stony Brook University. It's, I guess, if you wanted to look at it one way, you have a new residence hall and you have old residence halls. Do you feel that students that are in the new residence, or in the old residence halls, are subsidizing students that have nicer rooms? I mean, it's, that's, yes.
John, you're not being recognized. You've already spoken.
Just add one
Excuse
comment.
me, I am running this meeting. You've already spoken. Let the young lady finish.
Not a problem.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw you, but
It's okay, yeah. I mean, it just seems like we all attend Stony Brook University, whether you're at the main campus or you're at the Southampton campus. Why does it cost more to educate me than someone here? Why isn't it one number? What does it cost to educate a Stony Brook University student? Not a student at Southampton, not a student at main campus, not a student at Manhattan. I just feel like these numbers are really being skewed in order to execute your agenda. So I just think that's something you should keep in mind when making your decision. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Next speaker.
Can I add one more thing?
Oh,
Is that okay?
I thought you deferred your time to her.
Is it okay if not?
30 seconds.
Okay. POCD, I'm a student at Southampton, I'm a sophomore. I just have two quick things. You guys said that you didn't close the campus, which I understand there's still SOMAS and the MFA program, but there's no residential. And I mean, how can you build something without people actually being there? That's really what I wanted to say, and then as with what John, is there any way to have a full independent audit of actually, I mean, as Caroline said, there's new numbers all the time. Is there any way to actually see what the real numbers are? I mean, there's vast numbers. So any audit accounting? Independent, sorry.
Thank you
of the actual.
Thank you very much. Next is Michael Russell. Mike Russell.
This is very painful. Good morning, everybody. My fellow ex-members of the College Council. I was past SUNY trustee up through spring. I was intimately involved with the purchase of the Southampton campus. During 2006, I asked President Kenny for a business plan pertaining to the operation of this campus. The plan called for 800 new students enrolled This did not occur. In effect, less than 100 students were enrolled. I spoke with Congressman Bishop, who had been the provost. He knew that it was a difficult chore to make that campus viable, with the SUNY tuition being less than half of what LIU Southampton charged. Even with that tuition, LIU suffered a loss of over $11 million, almost bankrupted that college. During the past 2 years, we've had a new SUNY chancellor put in place, and this college council, after an exhaustive search, chose a new president with the approval of the SUNY Board of Trustees. Also, during the past 2 years, the SUNY budget has been cut by over $250 million. Senator LaValle's intent as Senate Chair of Higher Ed to make sure that operating funds were made available for the next 10 years so that Southampton could become a viable campus. Upon the loss of the Republican majority in the Senate, Senator LaValle was replaced by Senator Stavisky. The emphasis was no longer on SUNY but on New York City-based schools. Stony Brook University now had a senator with diminished power to allow Stony Brook to obtain new funds. With Speaker Silver and Assembly Higher Ed Chair Deborah Glick also being city-based, it is amazing to me that deeper cuts have not been made in the SUNY system. I've been a very close friend of Senator LaValle for almost 30 years. There is no doubt in my mind that Ken is working day and night to find ways to make Southampton work. But unless there's a change in the thought processes in Albany, higher ed will become second-rate in this state. President Stanley was given no choice but to make the decision that was made. It is up to the legislature to help President Stanley and make Stony Brook become all that it can be. I am sure that President Stanley, with a little more than 1 year on the job, did not come here with the intent to dismantle Southampton. President Stanley cannot be blamed for making a managerial decision that was needed to be made because of a lack of foresight and business acumen in Albany. SUNY should be the economic engine that pulls the state out of its economic malaise. Fund the campuses, don't gut them. I have to respect Dr. Stanley for having the fortitude and courage for making a very difficult decision. This council needs to stand by President Stanley in his decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, next speaker will be Bob Martin, and then on deck will be Julianne. And then we will be going into executive session.
Well, like you, I serve on a number of boards, including advisory boards, which I take very seriously, even though if there's no judiciary responsibility, and I assume you do as well. In terms of my background, I was a division president for a Fortune 500 company. As you can tell by my attire, I'm retired. And I've lived on 5 continents. I've run companies with thousands of employees in 67 countries at the same time. I understand complexity. My history with Southampton goes way back. I'm a graduate of Southampton. I served on the Board of Overseers when Long Island University was mismanaging it. I'd be happy to take you during your private session if you're interested in some real numbers, because I've dug through those numbers, on what really happened and what the real cost is. I then started and was the first chairman of Save the College, which Vam talked about today, which Fred Thiel was also a member of. I was appointed and asked to be chair of the Dean's Council, Stony Brook Southampton's Dean's Council. I was never informed of the closing or the shuttering of Southampton. My input was never asked for. So I invite you, if you'd like, during your closed session, if you'd like some other thoughts on what transpired, where the mismanagement was, where the mistakes were made, I'm happy to share that with you. Now, my objective today is not to point fingers. My objective is to perhaps provide a path to take us to where I think this campus ought to be. I believe the first mistake that's being made is we're assuming that the problem is profitability at Southampton or budget cuts out of Albany for Stony Brook. The latter certainly being an issue. But fundamentally, the problem is the SUNY model that we operate under today is inadequate. It's not taking up with the times. If I kept running my corporations the way SUNY continues to run and not taking recognition of the change in the operating environments, economics, competitive activity, new technology, I would have been bankrupt. I fear that SUNY is doing the same thing. It's interesting. SUNY, Stony Brook, it's an institution for learning, but you're not a learning organization. That's what best-in-class companies do, or institutions. I would suggest, my request to this board is that however you frame the decision in support of Dr. Stanley, you word it in a way that looks to the future. And you word it in a way that says, SUNY is an issue. That's the problem. How do we take Southampton, which we now call the problem, and rewrite that as an opportunity? How do we make Southampton the new model for what SUNY ought to be? Tapping into technology, providing focus. In any case, thank you for the opportunity, and good luck to you all. Bye.
Thank you very much. Recognize the two more speakers. I told Juliana, and then Norm Goodman. We're just running out of time, and we have other business to do, and we have to be for our lawyers on the litigation as well. So, state your full name for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Julianne Navarra. I'm the president of Water, which is the Southampton building that we all got moved into after our schools closed down. I just wanted to start off by saying that this decision was deemed illegal, and if I made any illegal decision, I would be impeached. This council does not need to stand by their president, they need to stand by the students. And the fact that President Obama in his package said that all environmental schools should have extra funding, the fact that if we have such high standards for who can get in and we can't have an environmental school, then who can? Who can have the environmental school? Why are we investing millions of dollars into sports programs when that's a natural talent? You say that you're so into research and everything that you want to find, so why can't your research be focused in an environmental way? Why can't we save the earth? Why do we have to learn over and over again how to shoot a ball into a basket? Give me a free scholarship for wanting to save the world, not because I could dunk a ball. You invested $78 million into the school, but after we closed it down, we didn't have any forewarning at all about fundraising or anything we could do. While we knew that our school was closing down, their dorms were still being built. There was still construction going on. So why are we the money that you're allocated as the e-board? I'm the president, I understand budget, I really do. We don't have that much money. But with the budget that we do have, how is it not being invested into our future? How are you going against the President of the United States being one of the top SUNY schools, one of the top schools in America? We are number 10 for medical and number 15 for all over. So I just want to know, I mean, honestly, me being as a president, I'd rather listen to my general board, my executive board, than break the law. Thank you very much.
Norm Goodman. Norm Goodman.
Good morning. I'm Norm Goodman. I'm in the Society Department. I've been a member of this community for 45 years. I've seen it grow and develop. But in response to the last point, I want to point out that Stony Brook is not closing down environmentalism. It's not closing down sustainability. It has simply moved it, in my view, frankly, from an academic point of view, to a better location because there's a greater academic support system, both in terms of teaching and research on this campus than was possible. We had hoped to have it at Southampton. It turned out not to be financially viable. My friends on the council, Lou Howard, Mike Russell from before, know that I have probably disagreed with many presidents over the years that I've been here. And I will disagree with President Stanley on a number of issues over the years, but not on this one. Not on this one. And to tell you why, let me give you an example. I was chairman of my department for 20 years. And I had to create, at one point we created a practicum to teach our graduate students how to teach so they could sustain the kind of environment we wanted to provide for our undergraduates at Stony Brook and when they left. And the students complained to me. He said, well, we do our research. We don't want to learn how to teach. And I said, well, if I was a grad student, I'd probably complain too, but I'm not a grad student. I'm the chairman of the department. And I have responsibility not only for you, but for the undergraduates who will be sitting in the chairs that you will be facing when you're teaching. And I have all that responsibility for everybody. And in order to carry that responsibility, I have to make sure that you're competent to teach in that classroom. That's what President Stanley and Provost Kaler and the administration board, with, by the way, the large support of the faculty that I've spoken to, have said, in order to protect the major academic programs at Stony Brook, in order to support the bulk of the students, the 25,000 undergraduate students, graduate and undergraduate students who are here, this was a financially unviable program. It wasn't closed, it wasn't stopped, it was transferred. Just as the programs at 401 Park Avenue, Manhattan, were closed, they'll be transferred here. We're not changing the academic programs, we're redirecting it. Finally, let me just say that all of this was brought on, as a number of people have said, by the financial plan of New York State legislature. That SUNY has lost over $600 million in the last 3 years. Stony Brook, $50 million in the last 2. And we face more. Many of us understand that we face the possibility of a budget cut coming in mid-year. Yet the legislature has not only failed to provide the support necessary, but failed to allow the university to gain its own support through modest and predictable tuition increases, to provide its own support through cutting down red tape that would allow, again, financial savings. So if there's any complaint to be made, and I think there is a complaint to be made, and by the way, all of us feel very bad about the students who had a different sight in mind. But if there's any complaint to be made, it should be directed northward to Albany. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Whitman. Ma'am, I've been, excuse me, stay right there. I've been very generous, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, legally, not required to take public comment. I thought we'd do 30 minutes, I'm now at 48 minutes. We have other business to conduct. If you have anything to say that hasn't already been said, I will entertain you for 2 minutes, and you will be the last speaker. Thank you.
Stony Brook Southampton has a unique ecosystem. I'd like to ask you to do a comprehensive environmental plan on the campus grounds to not have Stony Brook Southampton end up looking like this campus. It seems that there's been a neglect of the environment, as one of the students already said. I won't repeat her words, but we really need to look at the word sustainable, providing for the needs of today while providing for the needs of the future. And if we don't encourage environmental education, this planet is doomed. Our ecosystems are collapsing, the oceans are in peril, and we need these students to, they lived and breathed the environment, and you've taken that away. They can't learn here what they learned at Stony Brook Southampton, and I'd like you all to consider that before you make a rash decision.
Okay, well, I want to thank everybody who has come down and who has spoken. As I said, I took a broad sample of some parents, some students, some elected officials, some union folks, some people in favor, some people opposed, and I appreciate your comments. As I mentioned, and as everybody knows, there's litigation going on, and we are now going to go into executive session to be briefed by our attorneys on the status of the litigation, and then we have a new business to conduct afterwards. So, for the council members, we are going to move up to room 302 for executive session. Then there's an elevator right outside. And then when we're out of executive session, we'll come back into session for any further deliberations on this issue and any other new business that we have. Thank you. Motion, Diana, to go into executive session. Seconded by John. And let's go into executive session.
Coming back here.
Okay, we're going to go back into the public portion of our meeting and into new business and action items. And a couple of things. First, Consistent with my obligation under Section 356 of the Education Law, this is a statement of the facts that explain why a resolution on Southampton is being presented today instead of in advance for a vote by the council. It was necessary to hear today's discussion and deliberation by this council, including a variety of viewpoints and information prior to crafting the substance of the resolution. This cannot be anticipated in advance. In addition, a vote is needed today because of the Supreme Court Suffolk County decision and judgment in joining the council and the university from moving forward on plans for Southampton until such time as they comply with the mandates of Education Law, Section 356, which the court determined to be applicable. We have today heard from our attorneys, we've heard from the public, we've heard from some parents, some elected officials, faculty, students, both for and against, and on a decision that was made this spring regarding relocating some programs from Southampton to the main campus here at Stony Brook. Since that time, the economic and the financials situation of this state has only gotten worse, impacting all of the SUNYs, including Stony Brook. The decision in 2005 clearly was predicated upon a condition upon Southampton not diverting money from the main campus. You know, they're not easy decisions. We're in tough fiscal times, and tough times call for tough decisions, even if it means you can't please everybody as much as we want to. We'd like nothing more than to be able to accommodate all sides on an issue. But tough times require tough decisions, also require leadership, and you know, nobody's wants services cut, or taxes, or tuition increase. But sometimes you can't have it both ways. And again, we need to make some tough decisions. And this is not a political decision. As we all know, our fiduciary duty as council members is to do what's in the best interest of the entire university. Any actions that we do take here today will not hinder any efforts to come up with a reuse plan for the Southampton campus, one that will continue the programs that are still there, as well as identify future programs that you know, would work there, including the residential component. You know, and this council will support all efforts to see those things in the future. And so, with that, present a motion to this council, and I'm going to read it into the record. Whereas the Stony Brook Council passed a resolution dated September 9, 2005, supporting the acquisition of the Southampton campus, subject to certain conditions. And whereas the council resolved in its September 9, 2005 resolution that the acquisition must not divert resources required to maintain and build upon the strength and excellence by Stony Brook University. And whereas subsequently the state's economic situation changed for the worse, resulting in an unprecedented drop in tax revenues and revenues available for SUNY in general, and at this point, reinstating any changes to the Southampton campus is fiscally impossible. Whereas President Stanley discussed with the council on May 11, 2010, the issue of budget cuts and the profound impact on the programs at Southampton campus, and whereas the council did not codify and confirm at that time its discussion and/or its recommendations in an appropriate resolution, now therefore be it resolved that the council hereby expresses its support consistent with the conditions set forth in the September 9, 2005 resolution, of a decision to relocate undergraduate sustainability majors and undergraduate residential housing services to the Stony Brook main campus to address the difficult state budget situation, and be it resolved that the council supports the establishment of the committee with internal and external representation, co-chaired by a member of the Stony Brook Council, to identify and recommend productive, sustainable academic uses and/or other uses at the Southampton campus that incorporate a residential component to take advantage of existing facilities, and be it further resolved that the council supports the decision to continue the Masters of Fine Arts program, the summer writing program, and the marine science activities at the Southampton campus, and be it further resolved that the council will revisit the issue on an ongoing basis. And I ask for a motion on that resolution. Len Benedict, so Bob, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, let the record reflect that Matthew Graham, Robert Flynn, John Corrado, Leonard Benedict, myself, Jean Durant, and John Cochran in support, and 2 no votes, Frank Trotta and Lou Howard. The motion carries and is approved. Thank you very much. We have some other bit of new business, and that is a naming opportunity for the Christopher Pendergrass ALS Center, and I ask Eric Doble to come and make the presentation.
Thank you very much. Make this brief. I think you have a letter in your file that refers to this. We're asking that you allow us to move forward for SUNY naming policies with the naming of our ALS Center for Excellence at the Medical Center after Christopher Pendergast. He's a survivor himself and founder of Ride for Life, some of you may be familiar with. They've raised over $300,000, and having his name as part of this will help us continue to raise funds for the center.
And that action to name it requires a vote of this council.
It does.
Entertain a motion to approve the name.
So moved.
So moved by Jean Grant, seconded by John Cochran. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Not hearing no other new business to discuss. Our next meeting is Tuesday, December 7th, 2010. And the notice will go out for that meeting. I thank you all for your time and your indulgence and your cooperation. Meeting is adjourned. Motion to adjourn. So moved by Mr. Flynn, seconded by Mr. Benedict. All in favor? The meeting is closed. Thank you.